Your body is composed of trillions of cells. Lots of different types of cells that make up different organs and other parts of your body. Your body is also where 10 times that number of bacteria call home sweet home. But don't be afraid, these bacteria do more good than harm to you. And besides, just in case you wanted to strike up a conversation with your tenants, you and your bacteria do have a few things in common. All cells share some common characteristics that make them living things. All organisms are composed of cells, the basic fundamental unit of life. They contain DNA as a heritable genetic material, and they can reproduce. They transcribe DNA into RNA and translate RNA into proteins on ribosomes. They can also regulate transport across the cell membrane and require chemical energy for some cellular processes. The number one biggest difference between the bacteria in your body and the cells making up your body are these tiny cellular components called organelles. You've actually learned a lot about organelles in other lessons without knowing it. Organelles are simply membrane-bound compartments within a cell, such as the nucleus, mitochondria, chloroplast, Golgi, and endoplasmic reticulum. You are a eukaryote. Your cells are eukaryotic. Eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles, including a nucleus. Eukaryotes can be single-celled or multicelled, such as you, me, plants, fungi, and insects.
What I'm going to focus on today is really different, larger forms of genetic variation involving essentially gains, losses, and inversions of sequence. So shown here is a fairly, in a simple diagram, we have an example of some structural variation, operationally defined as events greater than a kb in size. So we have pieces of DNA that sometimes become deleted. We have pieces of DNA that sometimes become duplicated on chromosomes, and regions which can be, in fact, inverted or turned around with respect to another orientation. So this very busy map here represents probably about 3 years of work in my lab just to kind of characterize the general pattern of structural variation in 8 human genomes. So shown here are different human chromosomes, 4 from African and 4 from non-African. The distinctions really aren't that important. But what I'm showing you here is the presence of insertions, deletions, and inversions as blue, red, and green. And so each line here represents a different human genome that has been analyzed, looking for structural variation events greater than 5,000 base pairs in size. So a couple of things you can maybe get from this is you can see that there's a lot of genetic variation out there that is above the level of single base pair change. And most of the events that you're seeing here are essentially inherited, but we now know, based on studying roughly about 2,000 human genomes, that there's a significant fraction of very large events, often hundreds of kb in size, that are either individually specific or specific to specific families. So this is kind of changing our view of the dynamic nature of the human genome.
Listen to a discussion in a music history class. The class is studying improvisation.
Every jazz player knows what he or she means by improvisation, and all writers know what they mean by improvisation. The result, of course, is a lot of confusion and disagreement about what improvisation really is. We hear about the different types of improvisation: free improvisation, and controlled improvisation, and collective improvisation. What does it all mean? Yes, Mary?
My dictionary says improvise means to compose or recite without preparation.
That's true, but it tells us only part of the story. As we know, musicians learn how to play their instruments before they can improvise, so they do have some preparation. Yes, Arthur?
Maybe a better definition is composing and performing at the same time.
That tells us another part of the story. Let's try to understand it more by looking at history.
Long-term exposure to noise can lead to loss of hearing. The relative loudness of sounds is measured in decibels. Just to give you an idea of what this means, the sound of a whisper is 30 decibels, while a normal conversation is 60 decibels. The noise a vacuum cleaner makes is around 85 decibels. The danger zone, the risk of injury, begins at around 90. Continual exposure to sounds above 90 decibels can damage your hearing. Loud noises, especially when they come at you every day, all this noise can damage the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. Lots of everyday noises are bad for us in the long run. For example, a car horn sounds at around 100 decibels. A rock band at close range is 125 decibels. A jet engine at close range is one of the worst culprits at an ear-busting 140 decibels. The first thing to go is your high-frequency hearing, where you detect the consonant sounds in words. That's why a person with hearing loss can hear voices, but has trouble understanding what's being said.
Now choose a discussion in a history class.
Did anyone happen to catch the American metropolis last night? It was about the growth of cities.
I didn't see that, but I did see part of a documentary last week that told about a guy, I think he was a visitor from another country, who wrote a book about the growth of industry and so on, the things we've just studied. I remember he said there was a huge population explosion that turned America into a nation of cities all within a decade. He was talking mostly about Baltimore.
Baltimore then or now?
In the 19th century, right after the Civil War.
The program you saw was part of the same series as the one I want to tell you about. Last night the topic was New York City. As early as 1880, the federal government wrote a report on how the 5 separate municipalities of New York actually constituted one vast metropolitan area. It was a progressive way of thinking at the time, and within 20 years, those 5 municipalities were officially united as a single city by a vote of the people. To this day, however, each borough maintains traces of its original independence.
I agree with that. I'm from Brooklyn, and it's definitely different from the rest of New York.
If you have paraskevideckatriophobia, today is not your day. That's right, paraskevideckatriophobia is fear of Friday the 13th and the accidents, mishaps, and misfortunes thought by some to occur on that day. But is there anything really to fear? In fact, a study was conducted and published back in 1993 in the British Medical Journal that looked at hospital admissions due to accidents on one Friday the 13th compared with the previous Friday the 6th. The researchers tracked traffic on a highway in one part of England and found that many fewer cars were on the road on the 13th, perhaps due to people being leery of driving on that day, but hospital admissions in that area due to traffic accidents were actually higher. 45 people were admitted on the 6th, but 65 people were admitted on the 13th. The researchers concluded that a few people were indeed unlucky on that Friday the 13th in that part of England. Then again, what you really needed for this study was a control group that stays home, only to slip in the bathtub.
Spring is in the air, and so are those dang insects hungry for a blood meal. The victim can wind up with a bunch of bites, red and itchy. So what drugs can quench that itch? Maybe none, according to a study in the Drug and Therapeutics Bulletin. Researchers reviewed the literature on a variety of treatments. Topical antihistamines, generally not recommended. They're only marginally effective and shouldn't be used for longer than 3 days. Oral analgesics like ibuprofen are sometimes recommended, but the scientists say there's no evidence supporting that. Topical anesthetics such as lidocaine are only marginally effective and can sensitize the skin, meaning the itching could ultimately get worse. And common topical steroids like hydrocortisone, the problem here is that they're not supposed to be used on broken skin, and if you've been scratching, that skin may already be broken. The authors recommend a simple approach: clean the area and use a cold pack to tamp down inflammation and numb the nerves. If you haven't broken the skin, try the steroid cream. But your best approach may be ice. The cold hard fact is that this cold hard treatment works.
A hurricane is a massive storm system. In fact, it's the most powerful type of storm on Earth. Hurricanes form over warm tropical waters and frequently move toward land. Before I forget to mention this, hurricanes are also called typhoons or cyclones. It depends on where exactly they form. Not all hurricanes are alike. Some are, more powerful than others. Meteorologists have a rating system for them. They use the term category to rank every hurricane that forms. The scale ranks hurricanes according to their wind speed and ability to cause damage. A Category 1 hurricane is the weakest. A Category 5 hurricane is the most powerful. A hurricane typically begins as a tropical storm. It has wind speeds between 50 to 100 kilometers per hour. When the wind blows faster than 100 kilometers per hour, the tropical storm has become a hurricane. A Category 1 hurricane's winds are between 100 to 130 kilometers per hour. A Category 2 hurricane has winds up to 160 kilometers per hour. Winds between 160 and 185 kilometers per hour indicate a Category 3 hurricane. A Category 4 hurricane has wind speeds up to 220 kilometers per hour. Anything above that is a Class 5 hurricane. Thankfully, those are quite rare. They are simply devastating when they form and make landfall. Oh, by the way, before you ask, typhoons and cyclones use different measuring systems. So what I just described only applies to hurricanes.
It's common sense that some objects are harder than others. We refer to this characteristic as hardness. But what exactly is hardness? Let me tell you. It's the ability of a material to resist being damaged, scratched, or marred in any way. There's even a way to measure it. It's the Mohs scale of hardness. A German scientist, a mineralogist named Friedrich Mohs came up with the scale in 1812. Here's how he made it. Mohs took 10 different minerals. Then he rated them from 1 to 10 based on their ability to withstand damage and to damage other materials. Talc received a rating of 1. It's soft, it's easily scratched, and can hardly damage anything. Diamond received a rating of 10. It's the hardest natural substance known to man. The other objects on the scale that number from 2 to 9 are gypsum, calcite, fluorite, apatite, feldspar, quartz, topaz, and corundum. I see worried looks on your faces. Don't worry about writing them down. They're listed on page 234 of your text. Take a look. Now, what about the hardness of other objects? It depends on which of the 10 minerals can scratch them. For instance, your fingernails get a rating of 2.5 on the Mohs scale. So talc and gypsum can't scratch them, but calcite can. What are some others? Let's see. Iron is rated between 4 and 5. Glass is between 6 and 7. And steel is close to 8.
Did any of you notice those strange greenish-colored lights in the sky last night? Anybody? Mark?
I did, sir. They were beautiful. But, what were they?
We call them the northern lights, but they're also called auroras. There are 2 types of auroras, those in the northern hemisphere and those in the southern hemisphere. In the north, we call them the aurora borealis. In the south, they're the aurora australis. Auroras appear as colorful streams of light in the sky in high northern and southern latitudes. They frequently occur during the months before or after the equinox. The equinox happens in March and September. That's when the planet is tilted so that it's neither pointed away from nor toward the sun. So, why do auroras occur? They're the result of a reaction in the upper atmosphere. Solar winds hit the Earth's magnetic field. This may excite the oxygen and nitrogen atoms in the atmosphere. After some time, the atoms become relaxed. As they relax, the electrons in these atoms give off energy. This energy appears in the form of light. The color of the light depends on whether it comes from oxygen or nitrogen. In addition, the height in the atmosphere helps determine the colors that the light forms. Also, just so you know, oxygen usually emits a green or brownish red light. Nitrogen typically gives off a red or blue light. Most auroras are green in color.
Good afternoon, Miss Davis. I was told by James that you wanted to see me in your office.
Oh, I did. Thank you for coming, Jean. Have a seat. How are you? Is everything going fine?
Yes, pretty much. What about you, Miss Davis? I haven't seen you for a while.
Yes, I was away for a while. Actually, I went to Arizona and met your mother there. Didn't she tell you about it?
No, she didn't, but that's great. How is she?
She is fine. To me, she is still as exuberant as she was 20 years ago. You will never know how great a teacher your mother was. Anyway, how was your semester?
It was fun. The teachers were nice, especially Miss McKenna. I loved her class. Strange, I never liked math and struggled so much until I met Miss McKenna.
That's great. How was she so wonderful?
She spoke softly and explained thoroughly. She answered all of the questions earnestly. I wish all my teachers were like Miss McKenna.
Many of her students made that comment in the past, too.
Who could have guessed that I could get an A in math?
Why not? You're smart. You can get an A in any subject you want as long as you try.
I believe so. I should have tried harder instead of giving up and neglecting the hard subjects.
In my opinion, Pocahontas was a spy for the colonists. Yes, she served as a mediator between the British colonists and the Native Americans, but she was more of a spy. As you know, she even provided vital food supplies to the colonists. However, she didn't think of herself as a spy, and the colonists didn't trust her much despite her help. In a way, we could say she was a sad spy. Unfortunately, a war broke out between the Powhatans and the colonists. The colonists captured her and brought her to Jamestown. While she was in Jamestown as a hostage, she freely converted to Christianity and married John Rolfe. As we all know, this marriage brought the war to its end. What do you think? Was she a mediator or a spy? I believe she was a spy who played a role as a mediator. We are going to discuss mitosis. Mitosis is a process of cell division. As a result of cell division, two daughter cells are produced from a single parent cell. The daughter cells are identical to one another and to the original parent cell. Mitosis includes 4 phases called prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Let's discuss each phase here. In prophase, each chromosome duplicates to form 2 sister chromatids. In metaphase, the chromosomes line up at the equatorial plate and are held by microtubules and the centromere. In anaphase, the centromeres divide and sister chromatids separate and move toward the matching poles. Finally, in telophase, daughter chromosomes arrive at the poles and the microtubules disappear. The chromatin expands. The cytoplasm divides and the cell membrane pinches inward, producing 2 daughter cells.
Parents and other adults with whom children have close contact have a powerful influence on children's food preferences. Children are very sensitive to the reactions of those around them, and if they see others enjoying a particular food, they will be inclined more favourably towards that food. Thus, if parents want to persuade their children to eat more vegetables, then rather than simply telling them what to eat, it's more effective to demonstrate that they themselves
Let's see what's happening on the seabed. Okay, so these really remarkable features are known as black smokers. Don't forget, we're now 2.5 kilometres down. The light, it's all pitch black. What we're seeing is the lights from the submersible. So imagine you're looking at this out from your porthole, and it supports
Only 3 Arab countries, Jordan, Egypt, and Palestine, which had signed the peace accords with Israel, have sent their guards to attend the funeral of Mr. Shimon Peres, a former president and prime minister of Israel. Dozens of foreign dignitaries, including USA President Barack Obama and Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General United Nations, are reaching in Israel to attend the swearing-in ceremony of Shimon Peres, one of the country's founding fathers and Nobel Peace Prize winner, who had re-signed the Oslo Peace Accord in 1993, along with Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, for a lasting war between Israel and Palestine.
Color models, which are also known as color spaces, are basically languages to express what colors actually are. The most well-known color maze is RGB, which consists in describing colors through providing numbers to indicate their levels of red, green, and blue, respectively. RGB is an additive color model, which means that it's based on colors that are created by fixing a number of different light colors, being red, green, and blue, the most common primary colors used in this system. The attractive color system, on the other hand, is based on the secondary colors that are produced with primary colors in the additive model. Thus, for instance, cyan, magenta, or yellow, which are secondary colors in regard to the additive model, are primary in the subtractive model. TVs and computer monitors are great examples of additive color, since their pixels are composed of red, green, and blue subpixels.
The school canteen sells a large variety of water and food. The school canteen sells a large variety of water and food.
We are researching on the most significant challenges we are facing today. We are researching on the most significant challenges we are facing today.
People have been independent by using phones in everyday life. People have been independent by using phones in everyday life.